What's up everyone, Pooya here. In today's video, we're going to talk about my UI, WeakAura add-ons, where I explain which ones are the most essential and useful to have for Mythic Plus content. First, we'll start with the general UI and what you can see on your screen right now. For my UI, I mainly use two things. One is Elf UI, which is basically my party frames and what you can see everywhere on your screen, like here, where I mouse over and you will see them, or if I move my mouse all the way up here, you will see them, or if I move my mouse on the top left here, if I'm in a party, you will see that I have the option to put down a countdown or stuff like that. When I go here, you see that it says rate marker bar. So all of these are all it together with LVUI. Now for LVUI explanation and what you can do with it, there is a lot to discuss about it. I will put my profile down in the description below, however, for you to just import it and use it. However, if you want way more in-depth explanation for this UI, you can go and check Quasi's video that I will also put in the description below, to be able to know exactly which configuration to change. It's a very long video, like 2 hours, if I remember on the top of my head, where he explains everything. But basically what I did from the beginning is that I just looked at his very simple video. I got his profile and then I adjusted what I like to my own liking. For example, I changed the party location frame by just clicking here and moving it up and down. I changed the rate frame location, I changed the bnet location, I changed the way that the chat looks. And if you want to change anything, you can just go in your LUI section, click on movers, and when you right click on any section, it will open the option related to that section. So now that I right clicked on chat, it opened the chat options section, so I can easily access the section of that and easily change it to how I want it to look like. So that way you know exactly what to change. And as you can see down here is where actually my action bars are, which are hidden because I don't really need to see them due to the fact that I see my abilities right under my health bar and party frame, which will be up here. So if I go here and then I turn on my party frame, so let's go to movers, I can right click, it comes here. There should be an option to test if I see. So there we go. So this is how it generally looks, right? So basically this is my allies on the party. This is where I am and I have my abilities set here. Down here is where I track my racial, I track my pots, and also if I have a warlock pot as well, I also track it here. And also I track the cooldown of improvised trinket here as well because it's easier for me. I personally didn't really find a way to track it here. It's here, but it doesn't really track the cooldown of it. However, if I go and use an ability on a mob here, for example, so right now you see that it says it's active here and also here, which is where I mainly check the activation of it. But also, so I melt the cooldown of it, I see it there. But also when it goes on cooldown here, I can see the cooldown of it, so I know when my next ability is gonna trigger my trinket. But as you can see here, it's not really showing that, which personally I didn't find the solution for it. But if you do, please leave in the comments below so I can use it as well. So that's for that. Now for these that you can see here is a WeakAura, where I track my buffs and everything, which will be explained here right now in the WeakAura pack. So what you want to do is to download first of all WeakAura add-on, which is very important, and then secondly is that personally I use again Quasi's WeakAura for Demon Hunter. So I downloaded that. What you do is to download Quasi add-on first, and then when you download it, you go next, and then here you can import any class that you want. He has it for every class, and then you just import it. It goes to your WeakAura, and then you can adjust it however you like. So if you go, for example, to abilities, you can click on expand here, and then you can change how many abilities you want to be on the first row, how many you want to be on the second row, and so on. And then as you can see here, what the way that I personally customize it for myself, I have it based off my action bar. So first ability that I see here is my number 1 ability, second is my number 2, third is my number 3. Now the reason why I don't have Soul Cleave here is because of the fact that I don't really need to see Soul Cleave on my abilities because it doesn't have a cooldown. I don't need to track it. I just know the number and the action bar and click that I have to press for it to work. And I press it based off how many souls I generate, which is also here on top of my abilities. So if I go and fight this mob right here, you see those are the amount of souls I have right here. And then I know, hey, I have 4 right now. I can press my Soul Cleave. I have 63. I know that I have generated enough. I can press my Feldev or etc. and so on. So that's the way that I personally use it. But if you want to add any ability to it, you can just go in, and when you go to abilities tab, what I do personally is you just duplicate any ability, and then you go into the triggers, into load section. And here, when it's a spell known, you make it to the spell ID that you want. So for example, for Soul Cleave, when you go to your spell book and then you find it, you see that any ability on the bottom left of the tooltip has a special ID. So you will put that ID there on here, and then you will also go to actions. Was it actions? Let me find it here, trigger, and then also put it here as well. So that way you will duplicate it, and now it will show that ability for you instead. So just for you guys to show it real quick. So let me find an ability. Let's say I go here and just duplicate this real quick. So I duplicate it. Let's say test. We just name it test. And let's go find the ID for Soul Cleave. It is 228477. So 228477. We go into the trigger section. Here we put 228277 and press OK. Actually, was it 22? Oh, I put 227. Am I doing something wrong? 228477. Sorry, 477. So here it puts Soul Cleave. So now when I go back here, I can see the Soul Cleave actually in my action bar now. And when I use it, it will basically trigger it right here. So that's a very easy way to add any spell that you want to your Weakaura that you have if it doesn't already have it. For me, for example, it didn't already have Fracture that I added myself, because Fracture is again another spell that you don't really press it that much, the cooldown of it, you don't really know it, you just press it automatically. So I just added it myself. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this. Now for the next WeakAuras that are very essential for you to know, which is the second thing we'll go over, is going to be the good quality of life improvement WeakAuras for your gameplay, and that will help you improve your playstyle by a lot, by knowing things like ability timers of mobs / bosses, your buffs / debuffs, auto marking enemies for interrupts, or simple things like knowing your healer's mana, etc, etc. Now the things that I recommend that you really want to have are going to be from top external requests. One of the most important things for tank. Now, you don't really need to have this as a DPS or even a healer. This is mainly for a tank. So when you have this, you will set a macro for it. So when you go to your macro, you're going to be setting this, which is also in the WeakAura website that I will put in the description below. All of the WeakAuras that I mentioned here, the link to download them will be in the description below. So you will put this macro, and then if I have a healer in my group and I just press this button, it will send them a message to paint sub me or to bark me if it's a druid healer, or if you have a monk healer, it will send them to barrier you and use their shield on you. If you have a paladin healer, it will send them to sacrifice for you. So it's a very useful WeakAura to have, because it automatically scans the group and automatically learns who your healer class is, and automatically sends the message to that person without you having to change that macro for each person by copying their name and putting it there to s/w whisper that person to send ps me, like to trigger their Weakaura for yourself. The second Weakaura that I use is DK Blood Beast Tracker for M plus tanks. Now if you're any tank beside VDH this season, I don't really recommend using this. However, if you're VDH and you struggle with aggro, I recommend having this Weakaura, so you know when your DK procs and you know when you're likely to use aggro, because when DK procs, they will generate a very high threat and you can easily just lose aggro because of that. So pay attention to this and be ready for that once you see this ability. So I have it here. Once they proc, it shows a timer here as well, and you can know exactly when it happens. Now, another very important thing is tanks is auto marker. So auto marker, what it does is that when you move your mouse over a caster, it puts a marker on them. So for example, right now you see that it put a purple on that caster. It has a green on that caster. So if I clear the marker of this guy and I move my mouse, you see, by just the mouse over, it is automatically setting a mark on them. Why is this good now? When you're doing higher level keys and people are more coordinated or they have more knowledge, they will set a mark for their kick. For example, let's say I'm going to this pack, it has a 3 caster, I go to pull, so I start my pull by doing all of this. I go all of this, and then I tell my team, hey, I'm gonna kick orange. So they know that I'm always going to be kicking that orange caster, and they don't have to worry about kicking that caster anymore. So they can set themselves to the other markers. This way they can easily identify which caster is assigned to who, so you don't overlap interrupts and kicks, which is very, very important. And the second thing, which is also related to interrupts, is interrupt tracker, which again, I use the quasi interrupt tracker. So right here, you see a lot of the time, you can see it also on your screen now, exactly where it's positioned right now. It tracks the cooldown of every person in your group who has an interrupt. It tracks the interrupt cooldown for them. So you know when the person has their kick ready. So you know if that person has kick ready and you also have kick ready, you guys, there's a chance that you guys overlap. So you could, for example, wait for them to kick first and then you. Usually the tank kicks first and then it's, for example, a DK in the group or a shaman. But mainly in this season, the way that it's going is chain into beam, into Nova from VDH, into silent sigil from VDH, and then VDH does the kick, and then DK does the kick if it's a single caster, and then a range caster does the kick, usually mage in the meta that we are right now, and then it repeats itself, right? So this way you guys know when the next kick is going to be available, and if it's needed for you to use the ability to interrupt, for example, your fear sigil, or if you're playing paladin, using your Avenger Shield or Divine Toll to interrupt if no one else has an interrupt. So it is very useful to track your allies' interrupt by doing this. So that's pretty much it for all up to now. Okay, the next main thing is the M plus timer. So for M plus timer, the way that it works, when you enter a dungeon, it will pop up and you start the run. It shows you how much time is remaining. Each line represents if you're able to plus or no. And also here it shows, let's say when you kill a dungeon for the first time and you do it again on the same level, it saves the data from it. So the next time when you kill the first boss, it shows you if you were later by like X amount of time or faster by X amount of time. So you know how your run is going in the middle of it. So if I go in a rookery, let's say, and I kill it on a plus 12, and I kill the first boss at minute 7, and then I do it again and I kill the first boss at minute 8, it's gonna show here plus 1 minute in red. That way I know we're being 1 minute late. And if I look at my timer, let's say, and I see that, oh, we barely timed the rookery 12, I know that we have to make up time somehow. So I could do, for example, an extra pull, which is more riskier, but gives us more time to compensate. and if we do it, it guarantees us to time the dungeon or not. So it's a very, very good tool to have, and especially as tanks, it shows you the percentage. So when you go and kill the mobs, when you gather the mobs, it's not gonna pop up right now because I'm not in a key. However, if I go and gather the mobs, it shows you how much in the middle of the pool, how much those mobs are gonna give you percent by showing in a square here that, hey, it's going to give you a plus 4%. So that way, you know, like for example, toward the end, if the mob that you're about to kill is enough percent for you or not, or you have to pull another mob for you to be able to finish your percent, which is very, very, very useful and a must to have. Next up that I use is my stats. That is not really useful as VDH. However, it is super, super useful as a prot pal, which I recommend every prot pal to have it, which is prot pal stats. It shows you your block chance and your parry chance down here under my abilities is where I put it. So when you cast Avenger Shield as a prot pal, or a Word of Glory, you're gonna get block chance, and if you have a 100% block chance, you will reduce the damage of a magical tank buster or a hit that you're about to get by 33% roughly. So it's really good to know that when you're at 100% or if you're not. So you can calculate that instantly by just looking at that immediately. And the next thing that I would like to go over is going to be the dungeon pack that I use. Now for the dungeon pack, I use two packs, which is the Quasi one, which is a paid one to get by subscribing to his Patreon, and also the World TWW Dungeons, the World Within Dungeons, War Within Dungeons, sorry. Now, I totally recommend that if you don't want to pay, this alone is totally fine, and you don't need the Quasi one as well. The Quasi one is more of a detailed one, slash you wanting to have more detail on your screen, but I totally don't see it being a need to have. I just bought it because I wanted to have more info on my screen to just know more things and get used to them at the beginning of the season. I just got used to it, so I kept it. But last season I used to just run the War Within Dungeons pack, and I was totally fine with it, and I didn't even have the Quasi one. So what this pack does is that it shows the abilities that are about to hit you. Now I did modify it a little. It also shows you way more than what I did. For example, it shows you the FX timer, but I removed it because I'm not doing any key below 12, so I don't even need the FX timer to know when it's about to come or anything like that. It shows you any special ability that you get. For example, if you get a dot on you, let's say you're doing a Mother Lord, right? It should be somewhere here, but I don't see it right now. Or for example, let's go Priory, and the boss casts a shield on you and you're slowed. It shows you here and the cooldown of it, of how long it remains on the ground and stuff like that. It shows you the candle and how much is remaining on the Cinder Brew. If you pick up a how do you call it, a mug on the first boss phase, it shows you if you're holding it or not, which is very useful. So it's a very useful tool to have. And also on the top right, it shows you the important abilities that are about to come. So for example, an AoE that a mob is about to cast, or here this is the Chewy Chef on the second or third pull of Cinder Brew that you do, the AoE knockback that he casts. So it's super useful to have to know when an important ability is about to hit you. And the special tab is also very good because it shows when the boss is about to phase. For example, if I go in Cinder Brew and I'm phasing the boss, it will show at the top here that there's 5% left for the boss to phase, like 5% more damage. So I know when the boss is about to phase on the first boss Cinder Brew, and I know how to position the boss as a tank. Or as a DPS, you know when to pump more DPS on the boss and stuff like that. Or as a healer as well. So that's very useful to have. And the Little Wigs slash DBM timers is basically what you will have as your raid ability timer here, which you need to have the Big Wigs add-on for it. So you're gonna have Big Wigs and Little Wigs add-on, and then you will get this Weakaura, and whenever there's a ability that is important to be cast, it will show you like going up and down here like this. So it goes up to down, and then you know when it's about to come. And it also shows you in a text way here in this pack. Now, if you don't like to see it here, you can just delete it. Personally, the way that my eyes work nowadays is that I just fully ignore this, and I'm looking at the text on top of my character, so I know when the abilities are casting. I know knock in 2 seconds. I know it that way instead of looking at that. Even though I have both on my screen, which is kind of a screen clutter, but I don't mind it. I just got used to it. But if you prefer one or another, you can just go for them. You don't have to have both like me. So that's that. The next thing that I use is called a simple cursor reticle. Now this I didn't use in last season because I didn't feel the need for it. However, this season with how bigger the pulls are, in my opinion, and how more hectic things are, I a lot of the time found myself losing the track of my mouse. So I downloaded this Weakaura. It puts a circle either at the tip of your mouse or around your mouse. I set it in a way so it puts it at the around my mouse. So I know at all times where my mouse exactly is, which is very, very useful in my opinion to have. And that is pretty much it really for your WeakAuras and everything that you must have if you plan to do Mythic Plus dungeons. Everything else that I have that you see here is either for raiding or is kind of irrelevant to have nowadays. Like for example, best PI value. You just type !PI and it shows who gets the best PI and etc. like that. It's kind of irrelevant. It's just a fun thing to have for me. But yeah, that's pretty much it for all the WeakAuras. Next thing we'll go over is the platers. The plater I use is mainly from Cause's profile, and then I adjusted it to my own liking by going over the setting. For more detail, you can check his video in the description below. However, I'll also leave my own profile down below for those who enjoy my adjustment of his plater. Now, for basically the plater, the main things that this has is that every caster is pink, and every important mob is marked with blue. That is like an important target to kill. And every shitter or just a small mob that just hits you for no reason, like a dummy you can say, is just red. Simple as that. Now if I go and get aggro over a mob, it's gonna turn purple for me, and that's easily changeable in the settings that you can do. And if I don't have aggro, it turns red, and if the DPS is about to get aggro from me, it goes and turns into yellow. Now, another thing that it also has is that it puts your debuffs on the mobs at the top of them. So, for example, I see the frailty that I have on top of them. I see my brand that I put on top of them. And basically, it goes as that. And then you know which mob has which, and you can track it very, very easily. Now, if you go over the casters, you can also see the timer of their abilities. So here you see the timer of this guy's ability of when he's about to cast the orb ability of the frontal, or when he's about to cast a shield with a timer. Now it looks messy a little here, like a double, because I changed my big wigs here today, and big wigs is overlapping with DBM. So basically for this to work, you also again need to have the big wigs or DBM add-on. I have both, so because of that they're kind of overlapping with each other right now. So it's really important where when I explain the add-ons in the next section after the plater, you will know why. So you can see the ability on the next of the plater. You see the cooldown of the ability and when it's about to be cast. So it's very, very good to know and prepare yourself, for example, for a tank buster of a mob, and or a hard-hitting ability as a group, as a DPS, so you can use a defensive, or even if you're a healer, so you can prepare more for that ability. So having these kind of platers is very important. Now, even if you have DBM or big wigs and you have these showing to you, it might not show you the cooldown on a number. And for that, you're going to need Omni CC add-on. So when you go Omni CC, it shows here display cooldown ticks and resize cooldown ticks to fit within frames. You want to have both of those ticked and checked, so it will show the cooldown of those abilities for you. Lastly, we'll go over the add-ons that I use. These add-ons are very important to have if you want to do mythic dungeons and similar content in World of Warcraft. The first important one that I just mentioned is OmniCC to have cooldown on everything, that so you know the exact timing of them coming online. And the next one is OmniCD. So OmniCD, what it does is that it tracks the abilities of your group. So when I go here and I put on test, so for example here, you see like here right now, so you see that I can see my party frames debuffs. So if I see that my ally has a debuff that they might die, I could, for example, use my darkness to save them, or use my sack as a proud paladin to save them. And I put my CCs here so I know exactly who in my group has their CC ready, the CC ability. So for me, it's all these four as a VDH, which is my Chain, my Silence, my Nova, and my Fear, which will be shown here. And on the top of my party frame, I have the defensive, major defensive cooldowns. For example, my Darkness, or AMZ, or Priest, Dome Shield, that is up here. And then on the left of the party, you see their important cooldowns. And this is very important for a tank to track. So when you go to spells, you see, for example, a Death Knight, you can track their Abomination Limb. You can track their Pillar if they're playing Frost. You can track their main cooldown, Unholy Assault, which is as Unholy, which is meta right now in M+, that they use. So it's very important as a tank to know when their cooldowns are going to be up, so you know if you can go for a big pull or not. If I see that my group here doesn't have a cooldown ready, I should avoid going for a big pull, because the chances of us killing that pull is close to 0 due to no cooldown and no damage, and we just die because of that pull taking too long to basically die, and they kill us eventually. Or you can see your healer pain sub that I check on my healer. My healer is always at the top. They will have their pain sub up here, and I will just check it, that how many charges they have left. And also I like to check the defensive of my allies as well. For example, I check the AMS of my DK, especially if we're having, let's say, a Priory, second boss. I know when they have it off, so they can go for soaking the boss ability that you have to soak. Or when I know that they can soak a orb on the last boss of Floodgate. So it's very, very important to also know the defensive of your allies. So again, if you're playing Proud Paladin and you see that your allies don't have a defensive ready, and there's an important boss ability that is about to come, or a mob ability that is a hard hitting, you can use your sack on them, or you can use your darkness on them so they can survive it if they don't have a defensive. So as a tank, your job is not just tanking, is also to help your group survive at the same time as well. Now, as a VDH, is less than Proud Pal, because Proud Pal, you have a 1 minute sack. As a VDH, you have a 5 minute darkness, which is a stronger, but 5 minute, let's be honest, is way too long. So every 5 minutes, you basically pay attention to it. In my team, what I do is that when I see that no one has a defensive and my healer is busy really hard healing, I call, for example, I'm gonna darkness now, so everyone get in, so they survive, and I offload some pressure off of my healer. So it's very good that if you notice that and you feel like your healer is very in their head trying to heal this pressure, just try to help them out, right? Or call for your DK. What I usually do in the PUG, I just ping my DK multiple times. If they understand and put down their AMZ, good. If they don't, I immediately type AMZ. Just quickly type AMZ, right? It's not that hard to do that. So it's very important to have this OmniCD as well as not only tank but also DPS, in my opinion, too. For example, if you're playing Theater of Pain and you're on the second boss, Zav, and he sends you in duel, if you lose the duel, you get a 10% damage reduction debuff for a period of time. Now, if you see that the enemy that you're fighting has cooldowns and you don't, you should let them win so they don't get that damage reduction debuff. So when you go up, they can send their cooldowns and they do more damage to the boss. If you win and you don't get the debuff and they get the debuff and they send their cooldowns, what's the point? They're just doing 10% less damage than they could have done, and the boss takes longer, which is bad. So make sure to have this, please, all of you. The next thing that we're going to talk about is going to be DBM and big wigs and little wigs. So little wigs is a part of a big wigs that you must have, and DBM is basically what will tell you in your ear, for example, Let me go to a dungeon. Okay, so DBM has things like when you start the boss and you're fighting it, when there's a tank bosser that is about to come, it will tell in your ear to use a defensive. So that's DBM right there for you, that is telling you to use a defensive for this boss, which is very, very good to have. Now, one thing that you have to be very careful about that option is that not always that it says defensive, you should use a defensive. It can build up to a bad habit. And those habits can then be bad in future and higher keys, because not always when it says a defensive, you need a defensive. So try to experiment with that, and try to sometimes, if you're doing a homework key, for example, let's say you already have tanked all 12s and now you have a resilient 12 and you're tanking, try to tank one of these tank busters without using a defensive and see how much damage it actually does to you and if you can survive it or not. So you know which one is more important and at what point you actually need a defensive. Because not at all times you're going to need a defensive. For example, as a prot paladin, if you're doing a 12 and you're on Big Mama, you can just get hit with a tank buster with 100% spell block and just soak it to yourself without dying, and just heal yourself up with a word of glory. So you don't have to always use a defensive for it, so remember that. The other things that DBM and Little Wigs will give you is like the platers that I told you. For example, when I go here to trash and I put it here, it has an option called nameplates that I will put the ability next to the nameplate so you can see when it's going to be available and when the mob is going to cast the ability, which is very important. And they are also very important add-ons for raiding if you do raiding, so you know exactly when the boss ability is going to come out. So make sure to have these two add-ons, DBM and Big Wigs, or you can have one or the other, so you know exactly when the important abilities are going to be cast on you or the group, and you know when to react. Next add-on that is important to have is called GTFO, which is get the fuck out. So if there's an ability that is under you and is harming you, it will start to beep in your ear to get out of that zone immediately, which is more useful for raiding, but also important for even Mythic Plus dungeons. As you hear here, the beeping basically is going off and then I immediately die, right? So you want to have this going for you so you know exactly if there's an ability under you that is harmful, so you immediately move, especially in the hectic pulls that can be harmful. The next add-on we're going to talk about is Mythic Dungeon Tools. Now, for Mythic Dungeon Tools is a very, very, very important tool for tanks especially, so you can plan your route ahead of time, so you know exactly what you want to take to have that 100% count in the dungeon. The good option that it has is that you know exactly which mob will give you what count and percent. So for example, right now these three will give me 1.28, so I can plan ahead to know that if I take all of these it will be 100% and I don't have to worry about percent and count anymore. And as a healer and DPS, if you have this add-on, you can ask your tank to send their route so you know which pull is going to be a hard pull, so you know to save CDs for it, either as a healer to save CD for heal checks or as a DPS to save CD so the pull dies quicker. For example, the first pull here is a very, very big pull and we usually bloodlusted, or the pull 7 here we usually use CDs here as well, or the pull 3 here, so you know when you should use your CDs as a DPS to pop those ads out of the way, and as a healer to know when exactly to heal your group and when they are going to need a lot of healing checks. So this is very important. Make sure to have this if you're trying to go for high keys. I would say it more comes in handy after plus 12 keys. Up to that point, it's not really necessary, but even until then, it's good to have so you can learn the routes of a dungeon that you want to have. The next few add-ons that we're going to talk about are very simple add-ons. The next one is Raider IO, which will show your score that you have, the dungeons that you have timed, and when you're going to go into any group, it will show their score and also what dungeons they have timed or raids that they have done. So it's a useful information to know about the people you want to invite to your group or the groups that you want to join into. It's very, very simple add-on that you can just have, nothing really special about it. And the next thing that I'm going to talk about is M plus gains if you want to have. So M plus gains is very, very simple to predict the gain that you're going to have by timing a key. So for example, my IO right now is sitting at 3568. So let's say I time a Mechagun Workshop. The minimum IO that I'm going to get from the timing that dungeon on an 18 is going to give me 14 IO. Now, depending on how quick I time that dungeon, it can be higher. But the minimum is going to be 14. So I know, okay, if I time this, it's going to give me that amount of IO. So I can know roughly where my IO is going to end up. Now, this is personally, I'd like to know where my IO is going to end up because I'm pushing for title and trying to be a top player. I'm most of the time checking the top players IO and fighting with them and try to see, for example, I need to time, let's say 3 18s to be able to reach the title or whatever. So I can know exactly what I need to do. But if you don't care about it, you can just skip this out on it's whatever. The next thing that I would say is mandatory is true stat values. Now what it does is that it will give you a true rating of your stat that you have instead of just a percent. So here, for example, you see that my haste is sitting at 20,344.5 on true rating. And it shows 31%. However, the stats have a cap, and after that cap, they will give you a penalty. So for example, right now you can see that I'm losing a 10% and losing 60.5 penalty on my haste because of the cap that I have. If you don't have a true stat value add-on, you're not going to be able to see that. So it's very good to have this add-on so you know exactly where the cap is and exactly what number of a stat you should be aiming to gear your character. The next thing that is not really mandatory is called not even close. Now, not even close is a very, very good add-on to have. The reason why is because when you have this add-on, you copy the data of your character, and then when you go to the website, not even close. So here you just paste your character here by clicking paste from add-on. So I failed to copy it actually. So when I go back, I do allow, paste. So here it copies and pastes all of your character stats. Then I can select, okay, let's go key 12. So if I go to a key 12 and let's say I go to a floodgate and I choose Big Mama Tank Buster, I will survive it on a 12 without using anything and just having Emo Aura on and just my basic rotation, right? So if I add, for example, my fangs and spikes, it will make me survive with 4 million HP. If I add my meta, it will make me survive with 50 million. If I add more things, basically it adds stuff so you can predict before even going into the dungeon if a tank buster is going to kill you or not. So you know exactly roughly when you should use a defensive for something or not. So for example, let's say I put it on an 18. If I put it on an 18, the tank buster is just going to one-shot me. So if I use my fiery brand and I have my spikes up, and then let's say I have my DRs, I have my magic DR, and I have my HP, my demonic, my infernal, and I have Emo Aura running, I'm surviving the tank buster with a 31% HP, right? So that way I can predict that without anything else, I can just easily survive it. Now, dependent on my frailty stack, the HP also changes as well. Let's say I have, usually you will have like 5 if you're running the correct talents and doing the correct rotation, 5 to 7 to 8 maybe at most. So I can survive it with like 47% HP. So this is a very, very useful add-on to have as DPS as well, I would say. So you know if, let's say on Cinder Brew, for example, if the knockback or a throw chair is going to kill you or not, so you know if you should use a defensive for it or not. So I would really recommend this add-on to everyone to use. And the next add-on that we're going to talk about is a few add-ons all together. One is going to be called shared media, and causes shared media, and LIB shared media, library shared media. And these add-ons are all needed for basically sounds of your Weakaura. If you have a Weakaura that has a sound, for example, the one that I use that tells me for my mind control Tonsoon uses a text to speech, so it doesn't have a specific sound for it. If you have any Weakaura that wants to yell at you with a sound, you can, for example, go to triggers and actions and add a sound to it, play sound, and then add a sound to it, and then you can choose the sound from the shared media. Or if you're using the quasi plater, you're going to need these because the plater will have sounds in it that will tell you, for example, to use a defensive or stuff like that, or dodge or stuff like that on the plater itself for more important abilities. But if you don't have this add-on and the sounds from it, you're not going to be able to hear that. But yeah, that's pretty much it for all the add-ons. That is it for today's video about my UI and add-ons slash Weakaura. Hope you guys enjoyed it and found it useful. Until the next video, Pooya out.